everybody. Welcome back to Out of the Darkness. I am your host, Q. It's exciting to be back. It's exciting to be able to see all you happy people once again, to be back in the show. We are getting this down. We're getting this down. We're getting better and better. If you've noticed, I am switching venues, trying to get the sound right. So once again, thank you very much. If you are new to the show, make sure you subscribe. We're excited to have every last one of you here. We've got some special guests, hopefully that'll be joining us today. And as normal, we have on the other end, Mr. Soder. Soder, you there?
I'm here.
All right. All right.
Some internet magic. I'm here.
Well, you know, sometimes it takes a little bit of that internet magic. So.
Oh gosh, you have no idea, buddy. Got here to this brand new place today. I'm in a brand new building.
Well, I
did not know the Wi-Fi password, apparently.
Well,
I thought I did, but I didn't. Well, I spent about a half hour trying to figure out how to get that to work.
Well, you know, that's what happens when you break entering into someone else's place and try to steal their internet. So, but kudos to you for figuring it out. So that's the good part. So, hello, are you there? Hello?
Steve showing up?
No, I'm talking to you, buddy.
Oh, no, I'm still here.
Okay, well, fantastic. So, I'm waiting for the chat board to come up. It has not, so we are a little bit behind, but that's all right. So, yeah,
so... You want me to send you the live chat link then?
No, I've got it up, but it's still behind. So, but hey, I wanted to talk to you. So you got to go to the Dick Masterson show, right? The Road Rage show.
Yeah, I was able to go this past weekend. It was a very fun time. Met a lot of interesting and fun people. And some shenanigans happened. One guy in particular was acting very strange. Broke some eggs on people's heads
at the show.
Not at the show. Later on in the after party.
Was it Nick?
No, it was not Nick.
Oh darn! That would have been for a great show.
maybe, but the same guy was throwing empty beer bottles up on the stage and his shirt and other people's things.
Sounds like a real jackwagon.
Yeah, it was kind of annoying, especially when he tossed his beer bottle and there was some beer left and I got soaked with beer.
Well, that sounds great.
Yeah, it was a good time.
You're not selling it though. That just something about that just doesn't sound extremely exciting to me. So,
well, I'm really used to the podcast, right? I'm by myself, and I hear a funny story during the show, and I chuckle, right?
Okay.
But when you're at a live show, you have like I don't know how many guys were there. The place was maybe about half, 2/3 full.
Okay.
And just the energy in the room was something I've never really experienced before.
Sure.
I don't go to many live shows, so maybe this is something like other things have, but never experienced that kind of energy at a show before. It was very interesting, very, very enrapturing, right word.
Okay.
I don't know, it was fun. I had a really good time. Again, met some really funny people. Met people I've been talking to online for ages. And funny story, at the pre-show meetup, one guy I was chatting with was like, "Hey,
can you guys hear me?"
Yay! We can. Wait, Baker? Who's Baker?
Hello? Hello? Josh, you there?
I'm here. Is Baker here? Who is Baker? Who's Baker Shoes? Did we just dox someone?
I think they doxed themselves.
Oh, the camera's muted.
Oh, okay. Is that Mr. Steve Drazkowski? I think it was. I think he is making an entrance. So, Okay, so while he is getting his audio figured out, so to tell us about this. This sounds pretty interesting. So you said that there was a strange ambiance there, but a funny story. You were about to go into this, so
All right, yeah. I was just chatting with this gentleman, and just after kind of this lull in the conversation, he goes, "Does anyone know where Soder is? I want to call him a cuck to his face." And I go, "Of course I know him. He's me."
Wow. So that's wow. Um, so did he have that must have been kind of interesting for him to be face to face. So pretty much he already had, but did he follow it up with a second?
Oh no, we had a fun laugh at that.
That's
He
fantastic.
calls all moderators cucks, so
Well,
what he does.
that's
So
okay.
the interesting part is he is also a moderator of another community. So
Oh, there you go. There you go. Mr. Drazkowski, are you there with us? I saw him for just a second and then he was gone. So
I hear something hitting a table.
I'm not sure, but I feel bad because he went from being on Tucker Carlson and being on, what was it? I think Laura Ingraham, to being on this show. So not
So it's
nearly,
definitely a step down.
definitely a step down in technology. So for that, I will have to profusely apologize. So we are definitely not up to those technical standards. We'll get there one day, though. We will get there one day.
Someday, hopefully.
So yeah. So
Someday we'll have agents we can send out to these people's places to set up computers and satellite dishes so we can have live feeds from all around the world.
okay, so I don't
We could
typically
be called the QNN, Quentin News Network.
see. Okay, so wait, that hold on. So I'm gonna call out a couple people in the chat. So Julian, is it Sabish? Okay, I'll take back the boomerang is a foot. So tell me what the boomerang is. I think our sound is actually pretty good from what I'm seeing. And then Raquetta's boomerang has become infectious. I tell you what, Raquetta is kind of a friend of the show. Well, I won't say kind of. Raquetta's a friend. So I suppose if our show ends up being as successful as Raquetta's show, I guess I'll take that form of boomerang. What about you?
Me? Yes, I would.
Yeah, that's some boomerang I could. But Julian, explain yourself, because I think our sound has gotten a lot better.
You think they could be referring to Mr. Drazkowski's?
Probably. I'm not upset.
Presence?
I'm not upset about it at all. I just figured I would call out somebody from the.
Well, let me make sure that the stream's going out okay. It was earlier.
Yeah, it was earlier. So, Mr. Drazkowski, are you there? Can you hear us, Steve?
Okay, yeah. There we go. Hey, a face. I would just need some audio. The guest is compensating for your boomerang.
What did you say?
Julian, the guest is compensating for your boomerang.
It's all right. It's all right. Well, yeah, no offense taken. It's just it's good to have some laughs at other people's expense for a change. So but yeah, so the show went well. So Nick was in the show. I mean, what was his
Yeah, he did. One of his bits was he did live super chats.
Okay.
People could walk up to the stage and write down something he wanted him to read.
Oh wow.
And then I don't think he was expecting people to put money in the cooler where the pen and paper were, but people were throwing in money with their super chats. That was a very interesting show idea. That was fun.
That's always fantastic.
I thought for a little while there, for some of them, we might have been thrown out of the venue.
Yeah, there's always that chance when you are dealing with the Raquetta bunch. So,
but they didn't kick us out for anything. The staff was very professional, very nice. really good drinks. Felt a little felt a little sorry for him though, because someone in the front puked. Uh,
Well, sounds like a rockin' time in
it was. It
Minnesota.
was.
So
I highly recommend if you're a fan of Dick Masterson to go to one if you ever can.
sure, Mr. Drazkowski, can you hear us yet? Mr. Drazkowski, are you there yet? Okay. So I guess while we're waiting, Mr. Drazkowski is going to be here with us in a minute. I think the audio is getting that figured out, but yeah. So Soder, I don't know how much you got a chance to see in the news this week, but an awful lot of conversation about Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar being kept out of uh, the state of Israel.
Yeah, I remember seeing something about that. I remember someone somewhere wasn't able to travel somewhere.
Yeah, someone somewhere. Yeah, you summed it up in I'm always amazed at your ability to sum complex events up in a matter of a couple of words. So fantastic. So, I guess essentially the story was, of course, they are very well. They've shown themselves to be super anti-Semitic, I guess you would say, and so they planned a trip to Israel for whatever reason. I'm not sure. I don't know if it was to disparage them for their treatment of the people, but of course, after seeing what they did to the detention centers on the border and the lies that they told when they came back from there, I guess I wouldn't have trusted them in my country either, especially when they showed themselves to be enemies of the country, or to be, I don't know, not as not friendly. They seem to be hostile towards the country of Israel. So, um, with that being said, they denied their entry into the country on those grounds, and yeah, it kind of dominated the news cycle on Thursday as a result. And I thought it was kind of funny because, here we are in the United States, we are arguing over whether or not people should have the right to come and work here if they want. Um, and we actually see a country that's actually denying U.S. Congress people the right to enter the country. So I thought it was pretty neat. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm always going to uphold a country's right to exercise their own sovereignty. So, but of course, that's not something we're told that we should be able to do here in the United States. So I thought it was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't quite to me. I would have probably enjoyed it more if it was something that went against their talking points, or something that was their talking points. But now, because it doesn't benefit them, it's now a big deal. That would
Right.
be funnier to me.
Yeah.
But very much a right leaning topic of a country being able to say, "Oh no, you can't come here."
Well,
For some
okay.
reason.
I get that, but the thing that stands out to me is how many times. I mean, we look at just last week after those terrible shootings that took place in Dayton, Ohio, and in El Paso. How many times do we see the mayor or people in those cities saying the president doesn't need to come here? We don't want the president here. We want the president to stay out of our city. Which, of course, we know that those cities don't have the ability to restrict someone from coming, especially the president, from coming there. But why is it that those efforts were applauded, but then when the country, a sovereign nation, decided that they were going to restrict, and when the rest of the story came out, so I guess there's this um, organization, or this group, BDS. So this BDS movement, it's a boycott, divestment, sanctions group. It's a movement.
I've heard of it before.
Yeah. So in both Elon and Rashida Tlaib are, I guess, they're sympathizers with this movement. And so it wasn't long ago that Israel made it a state policy that sympathizers with that movement would not be granted access into the country for for national security reasons, and so they exercised that, and it I mean so there was legal grounds outside of them being a sovereign nation to do this. But boy, it raised all types of sand. So it was great to see the media spinning in all the ways they possibly could. So, but yeah. So Israel exercised their border patrol, and and everyone kind of went up in arms about it. So,
It's a fun week.
oh, it's a great time to be alive, man. It's a great time to be alive, and you got to think we're not even in 2020 yet. So next year is going to be absolutely riveting when you think about all that's going to transpire in an election year. I'm curious to see how it all pans out. I was gonna wear my Trump hat today, decided not to. I don't know how I feel about Trump right now. I've been a big supporter of his, but to be really honest with you, with this talk about red flag, um, hmm, that's a little frustrating for me. That's a little frustrating for me. I need to hear a little bit more about his stance on that. That kind of took me back a little bit, because always I'm an American first, a conservative second, Republican probably fifth, but conservative being pretty high on the list. And that I just don't know how you can possibly look at red flag and that could be seen as a conservative. How can you put it? I mean, can you? I mean, you've been on around this argument for a long time. Is there any way by which you can think of a red flag law and say that and see how a conservative could responsibly back it?
No, I can't. Because Nick, I kind of had an argument about due process and how it's a lot less defined than conservatives typically do or say it is. Typically when we think of due process, it's you have a trial and you're convicted of something, right?
Sure.
But then there's also due process of here's what the statutes or laws say on how this interaction goes. Like, for instance, the ability of cops to shoot people who threaten them. The due process received by threatening a cop is.
Are you there, Steve?
Can you hear us? Does anyone? Gosh, I wonder if his speakers are just really low and he can't hear us. That would be funny.
Possibly, but it also might be him not in his settings, not using the right speakers. So, do you have any way of getting a hold of him via landline?
No, I do not.
Try to.
I'll see if Tim can give me any answers.
Okay, perfect. But yeah, so go ahead and so as far as Nick's speaking on, okay, he's back. Steve, are you there?
Hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can. I think we're in.
Oh, right.
Fantastic.
Well,
right.
That's fantastic. So how are you doing down in your neck of the woods, Mr. Drazkowski?
Doing well. Doing well. And you're Quentin and
Josh. Quentin and then we have Soder.
Soder, okay.
Soder, yeah. So Josh wasn't able to make it today.
Doing well down here.
Well, excellent. Well, it is really an honor to have you on the show.
Well, it's an honor to be here.
Well, you are a true patriot.
Thank you. You flatter us a lot.
And as you know, a good friend of yours speaks very highly of you, Tim Miller. And
yes.
And he said for months that we definitely needed to get you on the show. So I didn't think that a huge star like yourself would be willing to come and grace us with your presence. So thank you so much for doing that.
Okay, I'm trying to swim out of it now, Quentin.
Yeah.
Robert
Furiously
Miller-
texting
Miller's
Tim to
a
give him a
great guy.
call.
Yeah, he is. We have a lot of fun discussions on the show. Sometimes we have some disagreements. We agree on more than we disagree on, though. So, but I'm sure that from being in the House and being in politics, as long as you have, even your closest friends don't necessarily have to agree with you 100% of the time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't, you sometimes don't want to, how does it say? In pursuit of the perfect, you lose, you lose a battle.
Yeah.
Don't give up the good in pursuit of the perfect.
There you go. Very good.
Yes.
Very good. So I want to get into talking to you about this Ilhan Omar situation, because obviously, it's not often where Minnesota is kind of, I mean, something going on in Minnesota is a huge topic, but it really is. And it's concerning on a lot of levels. And I do want to get into talking about that. But since we have you here, I'm going to throw a little curveball at you. Right now, I don't know how much you heard, but we were in the process of talking about. I've been a big supporter of President Trump since his announcing of his candidacy back in 2014, 2015, I think it was. And for most part, I've agreed with most of the things that he's done. Soder hasn't been a huge proponent of him, solely because of some of his stances, but his coming around, I think. But
I don't know. This red flags law stuff is really pushing me back.
Immediately after the shooting, he made a comment about red flag. And I know that's something that you fought, vehemently against in the Minnesota State House. Am I correct on that?
Absolutely. Yes.
So tell me this. So, and there were a few conservatives or a few Republicans that, from what I remember, and if I'm wrong, please, I want to be factual, but there were a few Republicans that are conservatives, I should say, that kind of sided. Well, I'll say they defected, but they kind of sided with the side of the red flag. Can you tell me, just so we can be fair here and see things from all different sides, what reasons would a conservative have to back something like red flag?
Well, Quentin, I think the only reason would be out of political fear. And that's the reason we have many of the Second Amendment prohibitions that we already have in law. All of them, which could be argued, are violations of our U.S. Constitution. But you see people giving up or caving on what they believe in because of political fear. And certainly with these shootings, the environment changes momentarily around the days of and shortly after the shootings because people are afraid and politicians become afraid because of a perceived outcry, from people thinking they, as the people holding the levers of government, need to do something. And that's the call, do something. And, in other words, do something even if it's wrong. And in this case, certainly it is wrong because it is something that isn't going to help us, but is going to certainly violate the Second Amendment rights. And it could be argued the safety of people and their families because of that.
Well, that's an interesting point that you bring up here, that there's this outcry of the people looking for government to do something, even though doing something might not exactly be the right thing. But what concerns me is that we live in a time where people look at government as being a solution, which I don't really believe that that's what our founding fathers expected of government. That wasn't the role of government, to be the solution. I understand that. In all fairness, I consider myself to be what we call a small L libertarian, right? I find myself following along with Republicans more times than not, solely because I'm not really fully behind the libertarian platform, but I'm definitely for limited government. Less government is better government as far as I'm concerned. But I believe in individual liberties, very much so. Um, and so I understand that unfortunately we have to be willing to give up some of our personal um, rights in order to be governed. I mean, there's that's just part of it. But I do not believe that the government is always the solution for all the world's problems. But have we come to a place or a climate in America where that's just the norm, where people look to the government to be the fixer?
Well, I think when we succumb to the notion that that the people saying do something compel an action, we are then as decision makers, as policy makers, accepting that. If back to your point, if we believe that government needs to do something, then in response, even in response to what could be argued as a real emotional and not well thought out response to a situation, then if we succumb to that notion, then that's what you're going to get is you're going to get people, actually injecting government into a situation in which, number one, they don't belong, or they aren't going to be able to affect things. We have all kinds of laws against individuals making bombs and having machine guns and other things, and you still get times when people will go out and violate those laws. As a group of people, we have to consent to the laws that are out there, and obviously some people don't want to do that. Either don't want to do that, or it can be argued as some people are mentally ill in some of these situations and lose it.
Well, I mean, I'm originally from Texas. I moved to the state of Minnesota on purpose.
I was going to ask why, Quentin.
More favorable summers, but definitely colder winters. But I moved here on purpose. But I do like the state of Minnesota. I mean, I love the outdoors. I love fishing. I love hunting. I mean, so a lot of great reasons to be here. But I'll say that there are certain places in Minnesota that I, as a um, as a family man, as a person, I don't necessarily feel safe being at certain times of the day, right? But it seems that it's a very safe state for the most part. But the places where we see large amounts of crime, unfortunately, seem to be very highly liberal districts, right? And so if these liberal politicians who are coming forward and saying that they could fix it, the Cory Bookers, the Kamala Harrises of the world, are saying they could fix it if they were just given the keys to fix it. I mean, Cory Booker was the mayor of Newark. The crime rate flourished under him. I mean, it was terrible, and still to this day. So I'm trying to understand that if we see these policies in a microcosm, right, that by giving them the keys to the country, I fail to see how those policies that we've already seen are going to yield a safer um, uh, environment for the rest of us. Um, so, I mean, can you speak on that? I mean, as far as those, I mean, and I understand that we want to be careful in that regard, but um, how can we expect that these policies that have failed us for so long are going to actually yield a better result on a national level?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the word microcosm that you used, and certainly you look at Rahm Emanuel in Chicago. I mean, how many homicides are in Chicago so far this year? I mean, it's hundreds,
Right.
that are happening annually, probably thousands in the city of Chicago. So they have the strictest gun control laws ostensibly in the country. And if the strictest gun control laws, thinking about Minnesota, if we're going to add more and more and more and more and more gun control laws to equal what Chicago's got, is that going to make us any safer as we look at Chicago? Obviously, violent crime there is much, much worse. The answer is no, and maybe we need to go the other direction. I quipped Quentin yesterday with Representative Miller and a couple others from our caucus that we were doing a radio show, and I remember years ago in the state of New Hampshire, there was a lawmaker proposing a bill that said, and I think they were taking it from another country, or I can't remember really how it worked, but or where they got it from. But what they did is the bill required people to have a firearm in their home to defend themselves. And if they didn't, then they were part of the problem, and the police services and other law enforcement efforts that we need in order to go out there and take care of protecting them was part of their responsibility. So they got to pay more taxes if they didn't follow through and do their share in defending themselves by equipping themselves with a firearm and training themselves and getting to know how to personally protect yourself in and around your home. So that's a different way to approach it. The idea of people being individual freedom, individual liberty, and individual responsibility, instead of this notion that we're going to call the government. By the way, when you call the government, they're here 30 minutes later and you're already dead.
Yeah. The quip was when seconds matter, the police are only minutes away. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I am 100% behind that bill. I've been asked and told that I should run for office. If you guys are willing to put a bill like that forward, I will put my name in the hat tomorrow. And I know Soder will as well. So I tell you what, I feel this way. If we are in a political climate where the government can force people to buy health insurance, which is nowhere in the Bill of Rights, but the rights of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So gun ownership is a constitutional right, but having health insurance is not. But we can be forced to have health insurance and not. I think that, hey, I love it, and you know what? And I even think, Soder, are you there? I think the government should offer subsidies.
Yeah, I'm here.
for buying.
I've got some children problems to deal with right now. I'll be back.
The government should offer subsidies for buying weapons. I think that all weapons should be tax deductible. For all the money that I spend on buying weapons at Cabela's and Shields, and I think I should get a tax write-off on that. See what you can do about that. I like that idea.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I thought it was a great idea then, but it goes back to individual and personal responsibility, and it throws to the wind the empty notion that government is going to protect you and be there for you at every corner. Of course, in these gun-free zones, as soon as there's a shooting, who do they call?
Sure.
A guy with a gun.
Yeah. Well, that was in, I believe, in Missouri.
I thought they called the churches for thoughts and prayers.
Well, I know in Missouri a couple weeks ago, it didn't really make national news, but there was a what seemed to be a mass shooting that was thwarted because there was an off-duty firefighter who was a carry holder that actually spotted the guy with I don't know if it was an AR or an AK, but an AR style weapon, and about 100 rounds of ammunition carrying with him, and he was stopped and detained until the police arrived on site. But unfortunately, there's so many of those stories. I mean, I know there's even been stories like that here in the state of Minnesota, and they don't get talked about very often, and I wish that they did, because far more often are lives saved by guns as opposed to being cost. as a result of gun.
And that's a perfect example, Quentin. So if we bring forward more gun control laws, does that guy in Missouri who was doing his job, being responsible, does he, in that situation, suddenly just gets to be too overbearing of a burden to carry a firearm with him? Does he suddenly not carry it anymore, and in that case is unable to save the day, and a bunch of people died because of it?
Well, I 100% agree. You know, it seems that majority of these shootings happen where people are most susceptible to them in those gun-free zones, as you talked about. But, you know, it frustrates me because some of these things are just, I feel, common sense. And I hate saying that because, as my dad said, common sense these days, common sense isn't, right? And so the issue that I look at is, you know, drugs are illegal in this country. Illegal drugs are illegal, but they're a problem, right? Um, Making something illegal doesn't necessarily mean that criminals won't do what they need to do in order to get them. They're criminals. I mean, it's self-explanatory. Criminals will break the law. So making a law, signing something, is only going to make honest people out of the people who were honest to begin with, right? I know we give Mr. Miller a lot of credit, Representative Miller, for his work on sex trafficking and wanting to end that horrible atrocity. That's illegal, but it's still a problem, right? And it needs to be dealt with. And so making something illegal has not shown. I mean, I believe that there was a time in this country where alcohol was illegal, right? And it brought some of the most violent times our country has ever seen as a result. I mean, drugs are illegal. We see the cartels are flourishing. So it just concerns me that the government looking to solve a problem can sometimes create problems as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And hey, by the way, I was watching Dana Lesh the other day, and she, you know, after this shooting, and she talked about the fact that people want to bring more and more regulations and add another law on top of the current law that already says it's illegal. And she coined the term that I really like. She says, "What are they going to do? Make it illegaler?" You know, so you're going to make it illegaler? Good luck.
Yeah. And so it's interesting, very interesting, by the way, that we are in the times where people have come to the place where they're looking for the government to be the fixer, as I guess you would put it, and that just, we're expecting them to do something they're never created to do. I believe that we need to look to ourselves as individuals to find solutions to these issues, and one of them obviously is we need to deal with the issue of mental health, for one, but the other is man, there's no sanctity of life anymore. It seems like it's not being. I just don't feel like it's being upheld. There should be, but and there once was. But when I was a kid growing up, I remember, you know, at school seeing guys with shotguns and rifles in their back window, you know, coming to school, driving all around with shotguns in the back window, which and you didn't hear about these types of things happening. But you know, I think that our view on life and the sanctity of life has definitely changed over the years, and that's something we should definitely address as a nation.
So Quentin, I was in the 11th grade in 1982, and I brought a 20 gauge shotgun to school on the bus in the case to class in order to do a gun cleaning demonstration. Did the gun cleaning demonstration, brought it back on the bus, went home, and it was fine. Nobody really had any issues with it.
Now we have kids being
different culture today.
Now we have kids being suspended for chewing their Pop-Tart in the shape of a gun. So, no, seriously, there was a kid that was suspended because he chewed a Pop-Tart in the shape of a gun and pointed it at someone. So,
wow.
You know, he could have given him diabetes. Which is pretty pretty bad.
I forgot about that. Yeah, thank you, Soder, for always keeping things, keeping some levity in the situation. So, yeah, diabetes is no laughing matter. So, thank you for that. So, but I want to talk to you while we have you, because I mean you're doing a great thing right now. And obviously Tim was talking about some of the work that you're doing as far as trying to help get to the bottom of this situation with Representative Omar, someone whom you've had some personal dealings with it when she was in the Minnesota State House, correct?
Correct. Yeah, served with her for 2 years.
Okay. Okay. And to be honest, I mean, I know you've kind of dealt with some pushback on both sides, really, which is unfortunate to see. But we're coming out of still in a situation where our president has been investigated time and time again as a result of media bias, whatever it might be. I mean, whatever you might call it, the Russian hoax, I mean, getting to the bottom of it. And to be honest with you, I said at the time, if Russia was truly meddling in our election process, by all means, investigate it, right? Investigate it, get to the bottom of it, figure out what's going on, because I take that very seriously. If someone and we'll get into the meat of the issue, but if someone is engaging in illegal activity or has done some things that broke the rules per se, as we're going to talk about in a minute, why would you not want to get to the bottom of that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect question, and of course the answer is because it's political. That's what it is. In case of Minnesota media, who has been asleep at the switch, decidedly asleep at the switch, it's because of two things: fear and politics. Those are the two things. And at this point, as I try to engage them more through the press conferences we're doing every other week or so now, it just seems that they're afraid to be perceived as supporting a position that might be perceived as something that's more like Trump than Omar, because there's kind of this there's this division or this kind of polarization, if you will, between those two figures at this point. And the media in Minnesota, of course, is very liberal, and they're just naturally on the side of the liberal individual here, and that's Representative Omar, who the Minneapolis Star-Tribune has a glowing, fawning portrait of her hung in their lobby of their office. So anyway, they don't want to be perceived as supporting something that the conservatives would like to see action on, because they're afraid that their liberal friends in their base will, kick the snot out of them for doing it.
So when I walk into state buildings, and they have the picture of the president on the wall, are you saying that that's a similar type of treatment that Ilhan Omar is getting in the Minnesota Star-Tribune? Or the
Minneapolis Star-Tribune? Yeah, they had it right in their office, a portrait, a painted portrait of her with right next to it, Quentin, an interpretive plaque, if you will, next to it, talking about her and how she came here and how she struggled to get here and how she rose to office and so forth. Right in the lobby of the Star-Tribune. So, how do you swim upstream on that?
Wow. And as a proponent of immigration, I mean, my father was an immigrant. He immigrated here to the United States, worked his tail off when he got here, went to college, got a degree, supported his family, and has raised some very responsible children. Has been a great example to myself and my siblings. Very thankful for the legacy that my father has left us. So when it comes to immigration, I'm a huge proponent of legal immigration, by the way. But boy, I mean, you know, it bothers me that it seems like even when I brought up these types of topics, she seems to be I've responded to her on Twitter and things like that. And of course, I don't have my picture up on Twitter for obvious reasons. But I mean, the immediate response is racist. You're a racist, which is sad. It's really, really sad because I feel that we can't have an honest dialogue anymore about people's merits without people immediately taking it to the extreme of you don't like me because of what I look like. And I feel like that's intellectually lazy to jump to that, right? I mean, no, I could have an issue with you if you are breaking the law and getting away with it. If you're breaking the law, trying to circumvent our systems and our well our immigration systems, right? I mean, so walk us through. So I mean, so I've heard tale of there being some IRS issues with some being filing jointly with someone, and if I'm wrong on this, get me straight on it. But that she filed jointly with someone that she was not married to, possibly. Is that are you hearing the same thing?
Yeah, that's correct. And that person is very likely her brother, who she married for reasons other than marriage type reasons. Obviously, I would expect it's in order to take advantage of our programs or our ability for him to immigrate here or whatever. But we're still trying to figure out what those motives are, and until we get a solid investigation, we really won't know. But, Representative Omar, when I served with her in the House from 2017 through the 2018 year, and then 2018, she was running for Congress. But she, in 2017, had a variety of campaign finance violations with the Campaign Finance Board, and it accrued a bunch of fines. She got fined by the Campaign Finance Board, and then another one came forward that related to her disclosure of her finances, or financial disclosures, and what that included, and she decided to file that instead of filing it the way the law says she has to, which is in January. She filed it in June of last year, which was a full 5 months later, and it was filed 3 days after the Democrat endorsing convention for her congressional seat. And so that's when I started to take notice of this. That was, by the way, what was included in that financial disclosure was that she took money from, and I think I lost your image here, Gwen, there we go, that she took honoraria. She took payments from 3 different colleges from throughout Minnesota: Normandale Community College, Inver Hills Community College, and Mankato State University. For going there to speak to them, she took payment, which was and is a direct and undeniable violation of Minnesota House ethics rules. So because she waited 5 months, she escaped the delegates knowing that information in her endorsing convention. She also escaped having an ethics hearing in the Minnesota House, because we would have had one, and she would have been found guilty of violating ethics at that point. So she escaped the whole thing by decidedly breaking the law and waiting 5 months in order to do that. So that's how I learned about her and her deviation from the law and her desire to not follow the law, because then I looked at her, after that point, looked at her campaign finance records and realized she had spent money to go to Estonia, to Florida, to Chicago, to Boston, and a variety of other places throughout the country that had nothing to do with her running at the time for the Minnesota House of Representatives. This is what this was about. So I filed.
This wasn't even her national congressional.
No,
that
this was
U.S. Congress.
Right. This was related to her Minnesota house race. And she was traveling to all of these places with that money, which it was clear to me is a violation of the law. And then she also spent money that got paid to her, the same gal who was her divorce lawyer. So it appeared that she was maybe using money for her divorce or something. So I filed that as part of the complaint too. Two different complaints. They were both investigated by the campaign finance board. And then it took nearly a full year, Quentin, for them to issue their findings and their order on June 6th of this year, just about a little over 2 months ago. And they came back and found her guilty on like 6 or 7 of those items, including spending money to fix her tax returns, spending money to go to 5 of those places that I mentioned. 5 of them were all illegal. And so they found her violating the law 6 or 7 times, fined her for each one. She had to pay the fine, and I think she has paid most of those fines by now. But what they also found and said in the report is that the taxes that she used campaign money to fix the taxes or personal tax returns. So using money for personal purposes, campaign money, all of these were for personal use, not for campaign use. But that the taxes that she used campaign money to fix were taxes that she filed jointly with Ahmad Hersey, who is the individual she has been living with since she was a teenager, and as a father of her kids, and they really lived as a family unit all the way through. Really never lived alone, but she was married to Ahmed Elmi, who came here from England in 2009, lived with her and Hersey and the kids. And a month later, she married Ahmed Elmi, who I'm rather certain is her brother. And then the whole group of people moved to Fargo, to North Dakota State University, where they went to school and lived together there. And then when school was done, within about a year after school was done in 2012, Elmi left the country, and they just continued as a family unit at that point as they had beforehand. So that's kind of the whole thing about this other person coming over. So she was legally married to the guy who came from England, Elmi, and Hersey is the father of her children and the individual who was actually part of their family going through all the way up to today. And they found out that she filed joint tax returns with Hersey. But Elmi is the individual she was legally married to. That's a violation of both federal and state law.
Wow. It's sickening. It's absolutely sickening to hear these things, because I know that there's a 2-tier justice system in this country, and I think most of us are getting sick. Wrong is wrong, and I have a hard time believing that if her last name was Trump or her last name was Pence, that this would not be a national news story. And outside of seeing you and on Fox and seeing you on other venues screaming from the rooftop, I'm just afraid that this wouldn't even be a story or even be getting out at all. So thank you for at least trying to help the people to at least get the truth. But it's sickening that this isn't being discussed more. So tell me this. So now she's a devout Muslim, which we have freedom of religion in this country, so I have no issue with that. That's fine. But devout enough that she has requested to take her oath on the Quran, which, okay, once again, that's whatever. She requested to wear the hijab, so they overturned congressional rules that requested that no head pieces be worn within Congress. So, okay, fair enough. But for someone that devout of a Muslim, um, maybe you can confirm this, but I was told that she actually was married by a Christian minister.
Yeah, the marriage to Elmi was through a Christian minister. Yeah, exactly.
That just seems strange to me that someone who is that devout of a Muslim would take their vows before a Christian. I mean, if you can't take your vows to the country on the Bible, but you can be married by a Christian pastor, that seems strange to me.
Well, it was a sham marriage, and so going about putting together a sham marriage, the meaning behind it for her and her religion probably wasn't first and foremost. It was, how do we get this done so that we can accomplish whatever it is we're going to accomplish with this sham marriage? So I think that's what you saw there. By the way, that you mentioned the hijab. I understand that Ilhan Omar did not wear a hijab at one point, and then simply started wearing it symbolically, and has ever since. And so her, adherence to her religion is not something she really does. She's using the hijab just as she used the sham marriage in order to accomplish something. The ends to her justify the means, and so she uses whatever means she can in order to get there. And that's what we saw with her ascending to Congress. You guys, if the delegates in the endorsing convention had known the contents of that report that showed that she took money from 3 universities, which, by the way, she served on the House Higher Education Committee during that time. They form out the fundamentals of the budget for the higher education institutions, including those 3. So had they known that, her Democrat political opponents would have used that to wrestle that endorsement and certainly the primary away from her. And she probably wouldn't be in Congress today, is what I would expect. By the way, a lot of this information is on a citizen petition website that I put together called omartruth.com. So for your listeners, omartruth.com is a chance for you to support one action that I've taken in the last couple of months, and that is to ask the U.S. House Ethics Committee to conduct an investigation of Representative Omar. And so we've got over 50,000 signatures already. And there's a variety of documents on there that you can take a look at and see some of these things, all the way from the tax fraud to, and we haven't gotten into it yet, but the perjury that she also has probable cause that's very clear and crystal clear that needs to be investigated as well.
So omartruth.com. Go ahead, Soder.
What?
No, or you was I thought I spoke over you.
No, you did not.
Okay.
Although I did have some questions, or a question about the Minnesota campaign finance stuff. Like, how did it not get caught by the campaign finance board? I thought their job was to audit these kinds of things themselves. Like, what's their purpose if that's not the case?
Well, there's 134 House seats. There's 67 Senate seats, and there's constitutional offices and challengers, multiple challengers for many of those seats. So it's a big deal. There's a lot of. I'm not going to make excuses for him, Soder. I heard at one point, I haven't verified this with the campaign finance board, but I heard at one point that their investigations are really strictly, not strictly, but generally complaint driven. I think they have some things that they go by. For instance, if so Representative Omar didn't file her statement of economic interest, that financial disclosure that I mentioned to you guys. She didn't file that on time. She got an $1,100 fine for deciding to file it 5 months late. But of course, she hid everything from both the Minnesota House of Representatives and the delegates along the way. So good question. I don't know the full answer to that, but they do, I think, kind of the cursory stuff. But if you want to get into some of the nuts and bolts of, in this case, the interpretation of should that money have been, was it legally spent to go to, an event in Florida that had nothing to do with your Minnesota House of Representative race, that's really kind of complaint driven.
It seems to me that the juice is not. I mean, that the punishment didn't fit the gravity of the crime. I mean, $1,100 fine, really? I mean, is that supposed to be a deterrent?
Yeah, well, I mean, good point. And actually, that's an idea for a bill. Is to she should have been. So apparently, there's like a $50 a day accrual of fine, and then at some point it's capped in law. We should maybe remove that cap, so it should have went up to 5,000 or whatever it would have done. I don't know.
Wow. That's an interesting take. I was whoa. Oh my. Is that me or is that coming through Steve?
I think it's you.
Huh. Okay, never mind then. I'll try to figure out what's going on over here.
Okay. So let's get into this other part of it. So we've talked about the IRS, we've talked about the sham marriage, but the other part of it is the perjury. So give us the nuts and bolts of that, if you could.
Well, Quentin, before we get, I'll get to that, but also I just was a week or 10 days ago now I think it was 10 days ago that we had a press conference with 9 other representatives from the Minnesota House, including Representative Miller, and we called on both the IRS and the Minnesota Department of Revenue to conduct an investigation around the tax fraud and potentially tax evasion charges that could and probably should be coming forward. So that's been done, and our goal with each of these is to make certain that the people who should be taking action to investigate and or prosecute in certain areas around this have all the information in front of them and have no excuse to not do the right thing. And so that's what we did with the U.S. House of Representatives and our Ethics Committee. That's what we did with the Minnesota Department of Revenue and the IRS. And the next step is around, as you mentioned, the perjury charges. So let me give the background for that. So as Representative Omar was actually a member of the Minnesota House of Representatives. In 2016, she was receiving, in 2017, questions from some of the Minnesota media, the right-wing media, if you will. Priya Samzadar and Scott Johnson had done a bunch of investigation. By the way, I should mention there's a guy named David Steinberg from the East Coast that has done a yeoman's work on a lot of the investigation around this. He's done a lot of deep dive, investigative journalist type work around this, and he deserves a lot of credit for all the details that are coming forward. But Priya and Scott Johnson actually did the early work, and that was in 2016 and 2017. And as that was coming forward, and people were asking questions about, well, so you're married to one person, but she had said at the time that she was married in the faith tradition of someone, because as she was going into her congressional race, you guys, she was coming forward with literature showing her and Hersey and their 3 kids to the delegates and to the people in her district as she was attempting to get elected. And people and Priya and others had dug up the fact that she was actually married to Elmy. And so she was in a position, as the media was starting to squeeze on her, saying, well, Okay, so she was essentially lying to the people she wanted to elect her, showing that this was her husband. And in her mind, maybe it was. I mean, she had probably forgotten about the sham marriage. It's probably, I mean, the sham marriage was probably on a piece of paper in a file somewhere, I'm guessing at that point, but she's still legally married to that guy. So her advisors at the time had said, well, how do we describe this? I don't, I mean, we saw this in some of the information that was made available by the Campaign Finance Board. But that they were saying, how do we, how do you say that? How do you say you're legally married to one person, but married in a cultural or faith tradition to another person? So they basically told her, you need to get this divorce done and get it done. And it wasn't until it became an inconvenient truth for her, the fact that she was married to someone else, that she actually went through this to get this marriage done. So that was 2017 when she got the marriage done, because that was at the time when all this started to happen. So in 2017, the way she went about the marriage or the divorce was she went through a process in the court that is used in the case where someone can't contact the person they're married to. They don't know where they are. They can't contact them, that type of thing. So she filled out this special sheet for this special kind of divorce that says, I have no idea where Ahmad Hersey is. I haven't seen him since June of 2011, she said. Okay. She doesn't know any of his next of kin, doesn't know any of his brothers or sisters or any relatives. Don't know who they are. Not known. Doesn't know, how to contact him or anything. And so she goes through all these. She had lied 7 times in that one document, and there's even a court document that shows that Ahmad Elmi was still here in July of 2012, as he got an eviction notice that was filed. It's a court document that was filed in July of 2012, and he had lived at that time about 10 blocks from Ilhan Omar. So he wasn't in England, as she had said at that point. I think she had said he was somewhere in England or something, but she didn't know where he was. So there was also a bunch of social media connectivity between them on Facebook and Instagram, showing them talking to each other on social media in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016, including a time when she was over in England in a photo next to them, including a time in 2012 where Elmi was in the maternity ward when her 3rd child was born, referring to the child as his niece. So a lot of photographic social media evidence that backs up, along with the court document, that shows that they were very much in communication during those years after that. She lied directly to the court in order to use this special approach to getting a divorce where he wouldn't have to come forward and be part of the divorce proceedings in front of the judge. She's done this again and again and pushed away the people who, so she's really the only spokesperson around this, and just basically throws up her hands each time and says it's not true, or calls me or others a racist like she did to you, or some people did to you. So that's where that's where the perjury stuff comes in. It's pretty darn clear.
The hypocrisy of all of it is, these people are, I mean, she's breaking law. I mean, there's about 5 or 6 different laws that I can count just by looking at my notes here that have been broken, clearly been broken, without getting into the bigamy, without getting into, immigration law. I mean, I'm not a expert on any of these things, but I mean, lying to a judge is breaking the law. But she is standing on this moral ground for impeaching the president.
Yeah.
But she is continuing to break laws. Now, have you heard? Yeah, I heard this, but again, I want to make sure that I'm being factual here. But it's possible that Omar might not necessarily be her true name. Is what I've heard. Have you heard that at all?
Yes, as a matter of fact, David Steinberg, who has done all of this research, has gone back and put together the graphic in his last blog post. Actually, it's on. If you want to go to Powerline blog, I know it's posted there and it's posted some other places. But he shows this graphic of the family. There were 6 in the family, and through the process of refugees seeking asylum in 1995, I think it was, when she came to the United States, that the process that her family went through only allows a certain number of people to go through at once. So they couldn't bring 6 people here. So 3 came here. The other 3 went to England and sought asylum and were granted it in England. So their name as a family, the last name was Elmi, Elmi. And when they came here, then Ilhan changed her last name to Omar. Her sister Sarah, who she has, it's the only sibling she's admitted as her sibling. She changed her last name to Noor. And so her name has been Noor since they moved here then. So exactly, they split into 2, and that's how it's understood, at least at this point. But Ilhan has all of her immigration documents on her phone. She showed them momentarily to one reporter, although she won't make them available to us. She obviously won't tell us even who her siblings are, or make them available to have part of this discussion. I mean, she could bring Ahmed Elmi forward, and they could do 1, 2, 3, and me, or whatever it's called, and answer the brother sister thing in a hurry. If indeed you were wanting to prove that people were making false allegations, that's how a normal person would act. But these are not. These are likely not false allegations.
I mean, she just does not seem to be reacting as someone who is innocent. I mean, I'm speaking subjectively here. I mean, but just from my point of view, if someone were to accuse me of marrying my sister, I'd take a DNA test tomorrow if need be to get my name clear. Regardless of, I mean, regardless of anything. I mean, I would think that your name would be worth stepping out to prove. And to be honest, I'm looking at a couple different things. Number one, the fact that she has not done anything. I mean, that's pretty simple. It's 2019. It's pretty simple to prove that you are not related to someone through undisputable DNA evidence. But then also the fact that the marriage was performed, I'm going back to that, by a Christian minister. To me, for someone who has asked that Congress, I'm just gonna. I'm not the elected official, so I don't have to watch my tongue on this. But for someone who has constantly used their religion as a shield, right, and a way by which to attack people like myself, people like yourself, to keep the wolves away from the door, from finding out the truth. So for someone who's used their religion as a shield as often as she has, to be married in a manner that was not consistent with what she claims to believe. I mean, what is more sacred than the unification of marriage, right? I mean, I believe both in Christian religion and also in the Muslim faith. I mean, there's a certain sanctity to marriage, but you can't take your vows to the country or your oath to the country of office on the Bible, but yet you are married by a Christian minister. That to me suggests, I'll be honest with you, it suggests that the whole thing is a sham, to be honest, and something that's being used for political expedience. But of course, it's I can only hope that that we will get to the bottom of it. Thank you very much for your hard work on this. I know this probably hasn't been the 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 best, probably hasn't been the best situation for you. I mean, in the political realm, taking on this giant, this behemoth. But thank you for putting the people and the truth above your own personal comfort. So thank you for that.
You bet. Thank you. Appreciate it, Quentin. Well, you guys, are we about at the end here?
Well, yeah, we're about.
So.
Go ahead, Soder.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but thank you very much. So, give us those two websites again, and we'll put them in the link to this this stream. So, the first one was Omar Truth.
OmarTruth.com, and I think that's the only one that I mentioned.
Okay. Well, there was a blog, a power.
Oh yeah, Powerline blog, and look for the latest article by David Steinberg on there. And I'm trying to remember the name and date of it, but it would have been within the last month or 6 weeks.
Okay. Well, once again, I know you're a very, very busy guy. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. It was great to meet you. Thank you for all the hard work you're doing for us there in the Minnesota House in St. Paul. And thank you for putting the people before your own personal comfort. I mean, I understand right now this is out of session for you, but you are spending a lot of time in pursuit of the truth here, and we appreciate that. Have you heard? I mean, is she being? Are there people who is she being primaried, or is she? I mean, I know that her district is a pretty liberal district from living here in Minnesota, but I have to believe in that if the people knew the truth, that they would hold her accountable or expect that she be held accountable. I do believe that about my fellow man. But I mean, are people at least looking to politically hold her accountable?
I believe so. Yeah, I've talked to both members of the Jewish community and the Somali community in her district. And by the way, a good number in the Somali community are beginning to distance themselves from her. But interestingly enough, at least to the Somali leader I talked to, he said, the ones who are not distancing themselves are the white progressives in her district. But a good number of the Somalis are. I think I was told nearly 70% of her district is white, and so. It's still very, very progressive district. It's about 75 or 80% Democrat normally. So if someone is going to challenge her, it needs to probably be somebody in the Democrat side, as you had inferred. And so it needs to be an endorsing challenge and or primary challenge. And I know some of the Jewish folks are looking at getting one or more candidates, and there may be others as well. But especially as you pointed out, if there gets to be an investigation and a formal official investigation and brings this stuff forward, I think you're going to find that it will gain some real traction. But as of right now, if we don't get an investigation and she just continues to kind of hang out there and float out there, I don't know that she'll be touched. She's raised a pile of money. Somebody said $2 million. I don't know if that's true, but she's raised a pile of money fighting Donald Trump and really the profile that she's created there. So the people on the progressives, the true believers on the far, far left where she is, love that, and she uses that to raise money from them.
Sure. Well, once again, we appreciate the work that you're putting in, and we will do everything we can to bring some light to this situation with our platform, because the only way that our political system is going to work is if the truth be known, and it must be known. And
Absolutely.
I don't think that anyone is above the law. I don't care if she were on the red side of the aisle or the blue side of the aisle or in the middle. I don't care that if people are circumventing our laws in order to gain political power, um, that has to be stopped. That has to be stopped. The truth is far too important for that. So thank you very much for joining us. We'd love to get you on again at some point as this thing continues to progress. But thank you for making time to be with us here. And
Thank you, Quentin and Soder. And next time I've got the technology figured out on my end now. So
yeah,
so I'll probably be connected better to begin with.
Well, the first time's always the toughest. So, but for all
and the second and the third and the fourth.
Yeah, we're just now trying to get this thing figured out 6 months in. So I don't feel bad. But for all you listeners out there, for all the folks that are watching at home, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope that you guys enjoyed the show. Be sure to follow. You have a Twitter, don't you?
Yes, at Steve Draz.
Okay, at Steve Draz. So be sure to follow at Steve Draz. We'll put that link down here. And for those of you guys that don't follow the show, be sure to subscribe. We are coming very, very closely to our 4,000 hours. So we're super excited about that. Our 4,000 hours of viewership. That's a huge milestone we're trying to get to. So be sure to share this video. And be sure to share the link. Be sure to talk to others. Let's get this word out. Let's make sure that people know what is going on in our country, because this affects not just people here in Minnesota. This affects people across the country. If we have people who are becoming emboldened and feel that they can skirt around laws in order to gain political power and influence, we will no longer have a republic anymore. So let's definitely do everything we can. So thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you, Quentin and Soder. Great meeting you guys. Thanks for what you're doing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
And we'll look forward to having you. And for those of you guys out there, have a blessed week, and we will talk to you soon. Bye now.